Hey YouTube, Thomas Diablo here. Fuel burning and wheel turning once again. We're starting in a spot, Blytheville, Indiana, I believe. I might be in Arkansas, I'm not sure yet. Heading down to West Memphis, Arkansas, to the Warner Terminal. I'm going to drop this load I have off here. It's a split load. I believe it's going to Canada from here. And got to get my truck worked on a little bit. I've got a problem with my tablet. It's not connecting up right now, and it's making a little bit of an issue with connectivity. So I don't want them to be mad at me since they don't know exactly what I'm doing at all times. So we're gonna have to get that looked at.
Turn left on ramp time 55 south.
It's been a nice day. It's a little cloudy out. It's been a good run. I've been all over Chicago, Indianapolis. It's been a good little run here for me. This job's not for everybody, I'll tell you that right now. Everybody thinks they want to get behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler and start jamming gears and running down the road, and it looks great from the outside, and it does. And it is, don't get me wrong, I love this job. It seems to be working for me pretty well, but I've got to tell you, if you're new at this and you're thinking you might want to do it, you really got to take a little bit of a look at your life. There are a couple of factors that really come into play with whether or not you can be successful at this. And we're just talking company driver at this point. So, because I'm going to start with company driver because I think that's the easiest way for anyone to get into it. And I jumped into it with both feet when I first started, and I'm going to assume that other people are going to do the same. I mean, there is a place and there is a reason for people to get their feet wet in this job and maybe try out with a local driving job. You know, you go get your CDL and maybe you want to hire on with a company running local just to get your feet wet. But for me, that's really not my style. So I said, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and jump in this thing with both feet and go OTR right from the beginning. And team too, so I do a little bit of both. I team drive and I'm go solo sometimes. And I'm solo right now. My partner, she had a family issue and jumped off the truck a couple weeks ago, so I've been rolling this one solo for a few weeks this time on this run. And like I said, I had run partners for quite a while as well, and I've done that. And running partners, it's good and bad. I mean, I think that we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it has its pros and cons. But right now, I'm going to talk about rolling solo. And so you get on board with the company, and you get an OTR job, rolling solo, you get your own truck. And I mean, that's an accomplishment in itself. Depending on what company you're with and how they run their orientation and their training and all of that, you know, you got to start somewhere. And you know, most people have little or no experience. You come out straight out of CDL school. I'm gonna give this guy the headlight flash and let him know he can move over. And that's another thing too. It's always nice to be courteous to your other drivers. You wanna make this as low impact as you can on everybody else around you, because there are going to be things that piss people off that you do no matter what. So anytime you get a chance to be courteous, let a guy in. You know, him getting in front of you, it's not going to make a bit of difference to you in your time in the overall picture. So that's one thing I will stress, is once you get out on the road, being courteous to not only other commercial drivers, but other four-wheel drivers too. You know, you really want to be looking out for everybody, because safety, it's no joke. You're driving an 80,000-pound battering ram, and if you don't take care of that, bad things can happen, and they can happen pretty darn fast. So that's just something to keep in mind. But back to the story. So say you come out of your CDL training program, and you know, some carriers have onboard CDL training programs where they bring you in and train you, and then they take the CDL training costs out of your pay packet for the next couple of years, and I wouldn't recommend that. But there are a lot of carriers that will reimburse you, and it's almost the opposite. And it's funny to me that some carriers will train you and then charge you for the training, but that same carrier might turn around and offer somebody that came from a different school tuition reimbursement and pay them back for what they paid to get trained, just to have you come on. So if you're right now, they're really trying to put drivers on the road. And so, like I said, you come out of your training program, I wouldn't recommend training for the same company that you're going to come on with unless they offer just to waive the training program cost altogether. But nowadays, it's pretty easy to go to your local unemployment office and apply, and for the most part, everyone I've seen that has tried has been able to get free CDL training through the unemployment office of their town too. So that's that's a nice program. But the bad thing is when they make it very easy for you to get your CDL, well, then I think it tends to put people behind the wheel that haven't really thought about what's going to entail doing this job and what kind of impact it's going to have on their life. And I don't think they really respect it when they go into it. I don't really think anybody, unless they're a legacy whose father, brother, their whole family, their wife, whatever, someone's been trucking around them for a long time, then they might have an idea of what's involved in this job. But if they're not a legacy candidate, I don't think a person off the street has any clue or any concept as to what this job is all about, what it takes, the highs and the lows that are involved with doing this job. And I really think that it takes you getting out there, and for some people, they come into it gung-ho and they might be the best student in the world, but you put them on a long haul route going OTR and it just doesn't work. That's why this industry trains so many people and puts so many people behind the wheel, because so few people stay behind the wheel. And that's the case. So few people stay behind the wheel. And I think that really nationwide the rate is about 90% of people wash out. So out of the 100 candidates, only 10 are going to last more than a year. And I get that, because to be honest, it's a hard job. It's a risky job. And there's a lot of responsibility, because not just to yourself, to the people around you, other truck drivers, people driving cars, just people with any property that you can possibly run over. I mean, it's a dangerous job, and realistically, like I said, we're talking about OTR and going long haul. You're on the job basically 24 hours a day for, at a minimum, 8 days a week, if not 2-week cycles as a very minimum. And some people, like I myself, often stay out 3-4 weeks at a time, at least. But then again too, for me, I don't have a lot of home time requirements that call me back more often than that. I mean, I have a family and I love them and I miss them. That's a big part of the problems on this thing too, is because really you will become estranged from your family to a certain level no matter what. If you're doing this job over the road, you will become estranged from your family, and you will test the bonds of your family, namely your spouse. Your kids, really, it's just, if I had younger kids, for me, my kids are all adults at this point in time, and they're already at the stage where they don't hang out with me as much as they used to anyways, and so, if I see all my kids once every couple weeks, well, that's about the same as I was doing before I took this job, so it's, kind of a wash. I would certainly like to be around my kids more. I miss my kids being kids, but at this point, that's where we're at. But your spouse, if you leave a spouse at home while you're out for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, your spouse has to be ultimately self-sufficient. And that's kind of tough to run a marriage where the person you leave at home to take care of a lot of the business has to be self-sufficient enough to run the house, because if she's self-sufficient enough to run the house, does she even need you? So it will test the relationship. It will. You know that. And it could be, it could be the husband as well, because I know plenty of females that are out running the road, and some of them have husbands or significant others back at home that are, keeping the fires lit for them, and that's so great. I can't tell you how much the people at home that deal with everything at home have to be praised for living this life, because it's not only tough on you as a driver, it can be tough on the person you leave at home, or tougher even on that person. But having said all that, like I said, I think that when you decide, you think, wow, that money looks good, I want to be a truck driver. Well, in the overall scheme of things, the money is not that great, because really, if you break it down to the amount of time, especially when you realize that you're living in this truck 24/7. You might stop off and stay in a hotel here and there, you have your home time, but basically, you're on duty 24 hours a day, even though on paper and to your company, you're not. And to your company, you're basically on duty a maximum of 14 hours a day for 5 days a week. And that would be the maximum, which is 70 hours in 8-day period. But if you did 5 14-hour days, that's 70 hours. And so that's kind of what you're getting paid. And the structure and the way the DOT conforms your time, your hours of service, and the time that you can drive, it's all based on an 8-day cycle rather than a 70. It's not a true week. It's actually a week and a day. That's what your 70 hours. You're allowed to be on duty for 70 hours of any 8-day period, and then it resets. But so, anyways, you really, when it comes down to it, unless you're getting paid really well by the mile, and most people starting out new are not getting paid that well by the mile, you're making $15 or $16 an hour sometimes, and that's rough. But when you are on the road, your expenses go way down unless you're crazy at the truck stops, because you don't. When you're living on a truck, you just don't spend the money. You just don't. You're driving or you're sleeping, so you're not spending hours a day on the computer buying everything you can from Amazon, and you're not shopping on eBay all day long, and you're not spending. And another reason is because you can't have. First off, you cannot just pull your semi into a Walmart. You cannot. You have to plan. Every time you make a choice to spend money, you have to think about it. You can't just roll right into Walmart and throw the parking brake on, jump out, and go in and spend. It just doesn't work that way. There are Walmarts that are right on the main drags where you can pull your trailer in and sleep and shop and do all that. But it's certainly not all of them, and it's certainly not as easy as you might hope. So anytime you go to spend money, you're going to have to think about it. And that helps you save money. So if you're in a job, and I think that realistically, a first-year driver, assuming that they're ready to do this job in a way that it has to be done, can probably make in that $800 to $1,200 a week range pretty consistent. I mean, I think there's going to be some low weeks, and there might be some weeks that you knock it out of the park. And even those good weeks, that's going to depend on you setting up a little bit of a performance record with your dispatch manager, where they know that you're good to run, because certain people do this job and they just do enough. They, especially solo guys, I call them the night sleepers. And there are some solo guys that only drive during the day. They stop their driving period early in the day. They get up really early in the morning, 4, 5 in the morning, get their 8 or 10 hours in a day of driving, and they head straight to the truck stop and get themselves a nice place to bed down for the night. And they're in that sleeper from 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening on until 4 in the morning. And that's just how they do it. Well, of limiting, because if you're not aggressively using your clock, you're just getting by. Those guys are all putting less than 2,000 miles. I mean that's a generalization, but 2,000 to 2,500 miles a week is the max for those guys, because a lot of them are really they're wanting to be home on the weekends, and they're just not out there beating it. Whereas for me, I drive, sleep, drive, sleep, drive, sleep. And my sleep periods are only what I have to sleep to allow myself to drive again as per DOT regulations. I'm not taking any extra sleep time. I'm never sleeping 12. I'm rarely sleeping 10, because I usually run what are known split sleeper berths, and it's either a 7-3 split or an 8-2 split, which allows me to break up my drive time into two sections of either 7 hours, then take a 3-hour rest and 3 hours, or 8 hours, take a 2-hour rest and then 2 hours. But that's how I run my schedule. And I usually try to get between and this job also, when you have pickups and deliveries and you've got hooking and you've got yard time, I try ideally to get from 8 to 10 hours of driving time in per day. And that usually allows me to run all 8 days. The 8th day being a shorter day, usually, almost always. But I try to keep going. I don't ever want to have an idle day where I sit around. And I try not to do 34-hour resets, which are at the end of your week, if you're doing a standard schedule where you're running 10s and you're sleeping all night and all that, at the end of the week you run out of time and you have to do a 34-hour reset to reset your clocks. Well, the way I run, if I put miles on every single day of that 8-day period, I can continue to turn it over. It's called recaps, and we'll get into recaps in another video, and I'll explain that, as well as the split sleeper berth rules. But the short answer is that I don't take those 34-hour resets unless I have to, or unless it's strategic for me. I might know that I need to have some service done on the truck. Well, I can do a 34-hour reset. It doesn't really hurt me, other than having that day and a half to 2 days that I don't make any money. But it can be a strategic thing to get other things done that I otherwise couldn't. And that's really, the name of this game is keeping the wheels turning. So you've got to keep the wheels turning to do this job. And so I think that anybody coming into it, you've got to be prepared for some isolation. Even if you are lucky enough, and I say lucky because I like driving teams. I like having a teammate in the truck with me. Even though if you drive as hard as I do, you don't spend much time talking to each other, because really if you run splits like I do, you're driving, they're sleeping, they're driving, you're sleeping, and you really only cross in the night for the most part. But there is interaction, and it's always nice, when there's interesting things you come up with, you deal with. There's times that having a partner is great, to have a spotter when you might need some help in a really complicated dock situation or whatever. I think that you're lucky if you're running teams. I think that you're a lucky person, and you can do it. I think you're lucky. If you're running solo, it's a bit harder. You spend a lot more time talking to yourself, hence making YouTube videos. But I think that when you come into this, you got to be prepared to spend some time alone, and you really have to concentrate on driving the truck correctly. I know that backing up is very important, and it is. But it's not just backing up. It's going forward too. A lot of people all they're worried about is, oh my gosh, I got out of class, they didn't teach me how to back up enough. I feel very unsure of myself by backing up ability. And that is a real thing. But the reality of it is, if you don't let yourself get too frustrated, you get out and look, you ask people that are standing around, because if you flail hard enough, eventually someone's going to come over and offer to give you a hand. Trust me. For me, I'm a good backer. Every once in a while, I get in an impossible situation, and it's nice to have someone that come out, and rarely, maybe 10% of the time, is the person that is approaching you when you're having a hard time backing up. Maybe 10% of the time is that person an asshole. There is that 10%, but it's rare. And for me personally, I never am the asshole. I see some people having a hard time, and if I can help them in any way, and if I can even move my truck to make it easier for them, I will, just because I understand that, and I know how frustrating it is. I think that frustration and fear is what hinders most people from doing a better job backing up. But having said that, really going forward, there's a lot involved with keeping this truck moving forward and keeping it moving forward safely. Maintaining your lane. That's huge. Maintaining your lane. These lines, they're not far apart. With this 53-foot trailer on, it can get kind of dicey, because first off, every single one of these trailers dog legs off to the right, to the passenger side, anywhere from an inch to a foot each trailer. So as you're looking back in your right hand side mirror, like I'm doing right now, I can see the side of my trailer, skin on the side of my trailer. That's because it's dog legging off that way. So that means, and as I look at this trailer, I think it's got about a foot of offset to it. So that means if my front tire is a foot away from the line, my trailer is on the line. And that can be problematic, because like right now, I'm passing a guy, and I'm having to make sure I'm hugging the left line just to keep my trailer off of his. So just maintaining your lane, it's hard. Staying focused on driving, it's hard. You can't be looking at your phone. You definitely cannot be texting. You cannot be surfing the web. You just can't do it. It's just not safe. There's too much. Things happen way too fast at this level for you to be mucking around like that. You just can't do it. I mean, it's bad enough that you've got your GPS going and you're having to look at it constantly to make sure you're on the right path. And don't kid yourself and think that GPS is perfect, because it's not. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the front of this truck, so you really just have to be focused. And then another problematic situation that I see people forgetting that they have a 53-foot trailer on. I myself have been a victim sometimes. You might be going through some kind of issue in your head, and that it can be as simple as you're just not concentrating because you're inside your head, and you go and make a turn, and luckily you look up into your mirror and you go, oh my gosh, I am not going to make that. And I've had, granted not often, thank gosh, but I've had those times where I've had to stop right in the middle of a turn and go, uh-oh, I've got to rethink this, and move my tractor back and adjust my cut just to get my trailer to come around something so I don't bring a traffic light with me. And those are things that, there's a lot of responsibility with this. So really, this video is a lot of talking so far, and I haven't gone very far in it, but really I want people, as they're thinking about this, you got to really evaluate your risk level and your tolerance of being away from your family and your tolerance of being alone before you take on this job. But it can be extremely rewarding too. And so, I've seen so much of the country and seen so many neat things that I don't ever get tired of it. I love the greenery. I'm from a part of the country that's very desert-y. And, to me, kind of once you've seen the desert, you've seen them all. But up here, I love driving the Midwest. I love I-40 and up, coast to coast. I don't mind New York, Newark, kind of tough. There's definitely challenges. Anywhere on the East Coast, especially the far East Coast, you got challenges. West Coast is a little bit tough, especially down in California where the speed limits are so low and the regulations are so high. But it can be a great job. I just really encourage anybody to think long and hard about it before you jump into it. And definitely think about it before you really jump off the diving board into the deep end, because I've seen a lot of people, and I won't say that I'm not one of those people, that completely annihilated their life assuming that this is going to be the life for them, and I just happen to be one of the lucky ones that it works for. It's certainly not everybody, but I'm going to continue making some videos about this. I am the uncommon trucker, I would think you'd say. I used to drive a truck a while back, then I let go of that for a while and did some work in the movie business for almost 20 years. And then some things came up and I decided I wanted to make a change and I wanted to get out and about, and I'm having a ball. It's not without its challenges though, and in further videos we'll talk about those. But signing off, this is Thomas Diablo, and we're rolling, burning fuel and turning wheels. So have a great day, YouTube, and we'll talk to you later.